Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Farrell. Thanks for joining our webinar today. First thing I'll say is we're going to make this quick, 30 minutes or less. We're going to do it as fast as we can here so you guys can, I guess, either go enjoy lunch or get out for the weekend. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody for next week, by the way. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about, we're calling it commitment phobia, and there's this whole transition going on with licensing and just the way in which we consume technology in today's world. We've heard the cloud, and we've heard a lot about pay as you go, pay by the drink. We've heard about agreements that were at one point committal. You pay for them for a year, 2 years, 3 years up front. Commercial off-the-shelf software. All these things that we used to have to buy, it's no more. And for a lot of people, something they really take advantage of today is, Microsoft licensing, and we'll touch on that today. When 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of, you bought these what's called enterprise agreements, and they were these 3-year committals, and every year you had to true up what you bought. And so today we're going to talk a lot about how you don't have to do that anymore, and how some of the same discounts, upgrades, assurance as they would call it, or software assurance, some of that stuff's just kind of inherent in this new world of pay-as-you-go licensing. And as we kind of talk about, and we'll talk about it in this deck, just kind of the consumption economics, the consumption of how this all works. So with that said, we're going to actually be taking another picture of our company today. We've grown quite a bit over the last year, but there's some of our wacky people. And yeah, I started the company in 2002. I'm, recently just put in a position as our chairman and founder. And, from a technology perspective, we're very focused around several topics, cloud being one of them. So we're national in terms of cloud solutions. We're ranked in the top 1% of cloud providers in the world in terms of delivering Microsoft Office 365 or Azure or other, Amazon Web Service cloud-based services. We're here in the Southwest United States. We have companies and partners we work with throughout the world, Malaysia, Europe, you name it, Germany. But really, based here in San Diego is our headquarters. Happy to be here. It's still hot as can be, whereas I'm seeing snow in some other places like Denver today. But that's where we're at. Just to give you an idea of our breadth. So we, manage well into the hundreds of thousands of different end users and seats. We operate a full help desk actually based here in San Diego, and we also have very high-end architects and engineers who are really there to help look at the business that we walk into and figure out how to drive business technology to help automate what happens in the business for our partners. But I won't go into any more. We'll just kind of move on. What we're going to cover today, I think the change has been, for the CIO of late. I have a lot of friends who are CIOs and, different IT managers of type. And, one of the things that they're talking about is how the cloud's not so daunting anymore. This whole pay-as-you-go licensing, something they're interested in. There's definitely, we're going to have to purchase licensing for the rest of our lives. But, the question is how do you do it? But I'll talk about what customers are going after. We're definitely going to dig in a little bit to what's, the traditional Microsoft Enterprise Agreement and actually a new type of quote-unquote enterprise agreement they're presenting called Enterprise Advantage. We're going to talk about a licensing agreement you guys probably don't hear much about, and I can explain why, but it's called MPSA, Microsoft Products and Services Agreement. And then we're going to talk about the big shift for Microsoft, which is coming down from the top, which is called Cloud Solution Provider, which is where Microsoft believes that you should buy licensing as you use it, and really latch yourself onto a services arm or a services company where they can help you with consuming or deploying that licensing, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the EA changes. We'll talk about a recent announcement by Microsoft where a lot of the traditional Microsoft account managers who you might have met in your organization have recently said to you, hey, we're no longer going to be managing you necessarily. It's going to come from an inside sales force and or a partner out there in the field. So they're calling that the red carpet rollout. We'll go into some price comparisons with CSP and some of the EA stuff. We'll talk about it's just the reality of it. No sales pitch here, just more of a what does this all mean, pay as you go, and how does it really work? The CTO, CFO type commitment phobia stuff, because I tell you, I talk to CFOs all the time and CTOs, and so much of the time where they want to deploy technology, they'll stop in their deployment or stop thinking about the deployment because they're worried about when the renewal comes up for their enterprise agreement or whatever the agreement is that they're buying from a software perspective, and they won't do anything because I think they're caught in that world of, I call it analysis paralysis, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. We'll talk about what you can and can't purchase, the best way to manage licenses. I'm fortunate to be able to meet a lot of people in the CIO world, and one of the things they want to figure out in the future is, if I'm going to move to this pay-as-you-go license, how do I manage it? How do I get sort of that front end that's put in front of me through an automated portal to be able to purchase what I need when I need it? And then again, scaling options with this pay-as-you-go, and just funding information. As you guys probably know, there's a lot of competition out there to, you see the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles, the IBMs, the VMwares. You see all these guys competing because they have competitive products now. And the question really is, in some of these cases, like with Microsoft, they're throwing out a lot of dollars at partners and companies like, end users to go out and help deploy technology. So we'll talk about that. So, what do partners and their customers want? And again, you guys can agree or disagree with me. And by the way, I always say to people, I'm the subject matter opinion expert. It's just my opinion, so don't fault me if you don't agree with anything here. But, customers today want to get discounts for what they're buying, as always. They want to pay for what they use or you use, and they only want to consume what you need. Traditional, hardware or VARs or resellers of hardware and software, of course it's in their best interest as a seller or a salesperson or a company to sell you a subscription to a bundle of licenses. So then you have everything in your toolkit as the customer to use, but oftentimes you don't use it. So paying for what you need, not getting caught up in these big bundles anymore, but just getting the products or the different components within a product that you need is really important, and you can finally do that today. Provisioning, from tools that automate stand-up of licenses in the cloud to actually auto migrations to the cloud where you can take an on-premise server to the cloud. It's all available today. So all of those migrations we pay a lot of money for outside consulting firms to do or our internal staff to do, you don't necessarily need to do it anymore. Automation and portals and all this management within these portals is coming, and it's coming fast. And if you don't know some of the tools that are out there, we're always happy to talk to you about them. And we actually use a few here. And then, as we were talking about this in an executive meeting yesterday that I had, and we were talking about how the great people, the engineering in this world, there's a shortage of it. There's a drought. And so for us, it's nice to have such a big staff at Managed Solution of all these high-end architects and engineers. But for the customer, the first thing they tell us these days is when I go and I look for somebody, it's really hard to find those senior-level guys. So with this new world of pay-as-you-go licensing and then partnerships with that to help deploy, using companies like us or other companies that are your partners today, I think CEOs are realizing it's just not going to be easy to find those senior-level guys anymore. So it makes a lot of sense to find a partner to latch on and do deployment. So, kind of in a step, 1 through 4 of that process, first the thing is figure out what you need. No more guessing. I think in the world of, if I had to commit to an enterprise agreement as a CIO, I had to guess, how many users am I going to grow into in the next 3 years? How many am I going to potentially reduce in terms of, maybe I'm doing a merger or an acquisition and maybe some of the workforce are not going to end up with. So we spent a lot of time through this analysis paralysis phase just trying to figure all that out. And that's in a lot of cases why things got delayed because, good thought on the CIO's part and the CFO, we didn't want to over or underspend, but it was challenging because in these committals, once we did it, we were stuck. So if any of you guys have been in those positions, you know what I mean. So, the second part is determine the cost, but not over 3 years. What you want to do is determine today's cost. And we'll talk about, how if you're buying licensing as you go almost on a daily basis, and when I say that, licensing now is prorated even within the month. So if you were to buy, let's say, a Microsoft Cloud product, everybody probably knows Office 365, and you turned it on, today, November, the 18th, you would only pay for the duration of the month. So being able to get that granular is important for customers, and also to be able to turn it off when you're not using it. Put purchasing decisions. Psychologically, I've always felt like, when we call a customer and they say we have these enterprise agreements and we ask them what's in them, they know, but they know they've really got to go back to Microsoft or their other partner who's selling them a license, spend a lot of time with them and try to figure out what's all in their, a bundle or portfolio of licensing with automated portals. Automated portals nowadays. it's a ton easier to be able to get you to log into a site, see dashboards, and see exactly what you're using and when you need it. And then, of course, managing those OpEx costs. I'm a huge believer that sort of like gas and electric, we're going to only pay for what we use. So you're going to want to have like a ability to monitor what's happening out there or meter your software usage. And there are tools today that do that, which can actually help you keep your cost, I call it, optimized for the month. And I hope you guys agree with some of that. That's just facts that have come out. So Forrester, we actually had a chance to meet with this gentleman from Forrester a couple of weeks ago. But some of the things they're saying, is that IT apps as they go. If you guys have ever, in the past bought an ERP system, enterprise resource planning system, so your accounting, finance, manufacturing, whatever it is, it's kind of a big bundle of software. You knew you would have to buy it up front, and if you look at some of the numbers in those kind of softwares, it was $2 million, $4 million at a time for big companies. And so the thing was is that companies would buy into these softwares, and then the features within these platforms would just creep up and up and up. But our usability for the user, they could never keep up with those feature sets. So we saw this thing called the consumption gap, or this consumption curve, where more and more features, but we couldn't even really roll out those features to our customers because it took so darn long to roll the whole thing out to our user in the first place. So having to go out and make that CapEx, investment up front was challenging, and all that's going away where you can buy into CRM softwares these days for per user or per device, and you can only consume, or you only start to use the software and consume it on a monthly basis. Bundled softwares or bundles of software aren't necessary anymore. If you guys are from the EA world, you guys have had what's called the Core Cal or the eCal or all these software bundles that may have components in them you don't use because you may go out and use another mobile device tool other than, say, Microsoft, or you may use some other hypervisor other than, again, Microsoft. So you can unbundle these products nowadays and, again, just get granular on what you need. And you can do it per user or per device. So maybe you have less devices than you have users in your environment, which we have a ton of manufacturing companies we outsource, and I got to tell you, there's a lot less users than there is a lot less devices than there are users in our organizations, especially in the manufacturing floor. Or even in healthcare, which is another big one for us, where we see nurses going up to these wireless on wheel type carts who use the same desktop. So anyway, the bundles, again, just get what you need and don't go out and buy the bundle when you don't need to. And then, are the upfront discounts really saving you money? So again, when we hear about these bundles, we're going to give you a discount if you buy the whole thing. I don't know. I kind of disagree with these days with what they're saying. Whereas if you buy a license as you need it, you're not only going to only use it when you deploy it, so you don't have to buy it up front, but you still get the same discounting as these licenses are broken out. Included in that, again, if you're not buying into a bundle and you can do software metering on each of those components, you can actually regulate when you don't use something and then turn it off. Again, only pay as you deploy and consume. That's going to be a big topic we're going to talk about, and we did an ROI later on in this presentation, which talks about this. Any customer we walk into, let's just Commons technology, Office 365, they say we want to go out and deploy it. The reality of it is that duration for deployment might be a month, might be 2 months, might be a year. And so if you think about it, when you buy an upfront type of agreement with companies, what you run into is you're paying for it right off the bat, but you may not be using it. In the pay-as-you-go model, let's say you're a 10,000 user company, you may deploy 1,000 seats month 1, 1,000 month 2, maybe 3,000 month 3. But if you can imagine, if you only had to pay for that first 1,000 seats up front month 1 and not the other 9,000, think about the money you're saving through that duration of deployment. So that's a really key thing when you start comparing, let me buy this committal agreement over 3 years, or let me do this, this pay-as-you-go model. I mean, it makes a ton of sense when you start thinking about it like that, especially when you look at deployment cycles. So Forrester, like I was mentioning in the last slide, these are some statistics from them, but they're talking about, they do a ton of interviews with CIOs and finance people these days and different IT managers, and they are talking about what's happening in the marketplace. The mega clouds set the public pace right now. So one of the things that's happening is that you guys are able to go out there now and buy the utility-based public clouds on a pay-as-you-go basis. Even a year or 2 years ago, I think if you were approached by a partner rep and they told you, are you interested in Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services or any one of those big public clouds, they would have told you, we still want you to commit to a certain amount of spend up front, excuse me. Nowadays, they're actually turning it over into, again, pay for what you use when you use it, and that's going to be something that's bought through some of these new programs that are out there. What's good, and I know it was a challenge for a bunch of years, is that I think IT leadership has stopped finally, fighting the cloud. I think it's something they're embracing. Again, because just advice, what I'm hearing out there is that these IT managers who have done that, they're worried less about infrastructure and more about, this when the executives get in a room talking about business process and how do we automate what we do. So with that said, they are using partners. Again, the drought of resources out there makes it challenging. So there are partners out there who help leverage these public clouds and give like what I'll call introductions to it, or education or workshops that help you really understand what's out there. And the public cloud, let me say for anybody who's the systems admin or the systems engineer on the phone, this is a whole new world for you guys of opportunity to do new things inside of these clouds, from Internet of Things to predictive analytics to high availability disaster recovery infrastructures. I mean, it's incredible the amount of work that can be done in these public clouds. So anyway, the other thing that's happening is a lot of people over the last, I'd say 5 years, I would say is probably the good time frame. A lot of people built their own private clouds in local data centers, or even in their own data center where they call it a private cloud. People are really reevaluating that. I think that tipping point is finally here where people are saying that the public cloud like at Amazon or an Azure or a Google is starting to make a lot more financial sense as we are trying to get out of the private cloud where we invested in infrastructure and the servers, the switches, the bandwidth, all that good stuff. So anyway, this is a big topic. Forrester is really talking about how this is going to be a big model in 2016, 17, and 18 and ongoing. I think $235 billion over the next few years. So I want to go back and just kind of give you an example of what I call the math about sort of this pay per seat or pay up front, and then we'll get deep into the the changes that are coming out inside of the enterprise agreements and what's happening in the Microsoft space. So we took a 1,000-seat customer recently, and they wanted to move to Office 365. We asked them, what's their deployment time, and they said, we're not going to be able to do the old Big Bang Theory and do it over a weekend. It's going to take us 3 months. So with that said, we kind of did, we said, well, let's just take an average over 3 months. We're going to be able to deploy on a weekly basis, let's say 83 seats. If we were to buy that licensing in an upfront agreement at an average cost of $10 per seat per month, over a 36-month period, we would have paid $360K, or we would actually be paying that upfront in a committal agreement. On a monthly spend, if we were buying those $10 seats, obviously you see that $10K is what we'd spend per month. But let's go down to the deployment. This is where I think people are figuring it out, that all of a sudden, wow, if I'm deploying over a phased period, and let's say it's 3 months, and if the longer you extend it, the more savings, I'm actually going to save money right off the bat by going to this pay-as-you-go model. So 83 seats deployed weekly at $10. You can kind of see how it compounds. The first week would be $830. The next time it would be 166 seats, so you compound that. But in reality, over the first 3 months, you would have saved $13,815 if you would have went with some model like this. So let's get right into it. The Microsoft EA, okay? So for a lot of customers who don't know what it is, Microsoft Enterprise Agreements are really for companies who traditionally have 250 seats or more, okay? So anybody who got to that point in their business, Microsoft felt that we could kind of bring in, one big licensing bundle for the customer, and they would be able to pay for it on a 3-year commitment. As of July 1st of this year, Microsoft said any company under 500 seats is not going to be able to buy an EA going forward unless they do one more renewal. So that is changing. The EA provided traditional discounts on software licensing, so I'm sure a lot of you guys who have purchased it got a discount off what you would traditionally see. They were 3-year commitments, or are 3-year commitments still. The big thing is scaling back. Once you've committed, say it's 1,000 seats, it's really hard to scale back and say I'm only going to pay for 800 the next year. You can always buy more, of course, and that's called truing up. But the difference is that scaling back or even scaling down on licensing types. Let's say you don't use the big SKU from Microsoft Office 365 E5 and you only need E1. You can't go back once you bought into these. And then there's the software assurance expense, which comes with benefits. Don't get me wrong. You can get your next version of the Windows OS or whatever the platform is you're out there working on. But again, if you're in the cloud and using products like that, aren't you going to get the new version anyway? So for a lot of you guys, I'm sure this is stuff you've had, and at times it works really well for organizations, so don't let me take away the fact that EA has been a staple for Microsoft for 20, 25 years. But for a lot of people, it did kind of cause them to really have to evaluate these agreements every 3 years and even yearly as they looked at their different deployment cycles. So like I talked about these enterprise agreement changes, a lot of you who may have had an enterprise agreement got a notification from your local Microsoft rep or account manager probably 3-4 months ago that you would not necessarily be managed by them anymore. So they wouldn't be spending as much time on site, and you would be kind of funneled off to a team that was back east. I think it's somewhere in North Dakota or South Dakota. The point of that is Microsoft actually believes that they want to start allowing partners to come in and help with deployment. And I talked about in the beginning, giving deployment dollars and things like that from Microsoft to help. They've done away with a lot of the accounts and said we're going to give those over to partners and let them work with the customer to make sure that they're consuming technology. We talk about the new level of the partner sales team. In a lot of cases, the systems integrator, the consulting firm of today becomes that deployment partner for you. With the enterprise agreement changes, there's the new level of managed licensing and automation where there's automated portals. We operate a portal called Snap that allows you to buy licensing on the fly as you need it and then turn it off when you don't and meter it. And then, of course, a lot of the people who are buying into these monthly agreements are asking for that support back to Microsoft 24/7, 365 days a year, which is part of some different agreements that you can buy in this pay-as-you-go licensing model. And they're actually included in the per-seat cost. So what is the Microsoft Products and Services Agreement? Let's go there. So EA was the traditional vehicle by which you bought Microsoft licensing or product. A lot of people are not privy to what's called the Microsoft Products and Services Agreement, which I will tell you is the go-forward motion with this other product I'll show you in a few minutes called Cloud Solution Provider. Microsoft Products and Service Agreement is an agreement that lets you, first, it doesn't get you into a 3-year commitment. You can commit up front to 12-month terms with Microsoft on this one. You can true up licensing as you go, but it doesn't weight you down with those heavy commitments. There are no minimum purchasing requirements, so you can buy an MPSA with 100 users, 500 users, or even 50 users, and then true up as you go through. And then the same thing with Microsoft Azure, as we were talking about, which is Microsoft's infrastructure or platform as a service product. You can actually buy Microsoft Azure as you go. So it's really a more scalable model with your business, especially as you sit in those 500 seats or less. And in many, many cases with us and our partners and customers, big customers like this agreement as well. The next one we're going to talk about is what's called the Cloud Solution Provider, which is for Microsoft sort of the go-forward plan in a lot of cases. So again, Microsoft felt that for many years there really wasn't a ton of other players in town. Like we talked about at the beginning, there wasn't the VMwares, there wasn't the Googles, there wasn't the Amazon Web Services. And so buying an enterprise agreement back when was pretty easy. I mean, you knew you were going to use most Microsoft products, so you bought in, you bought the bundle, and hopefully you deployed it. Well, what they were finding over time is that as competitors come in, and we'll take VMware for example, there was times where Microsoft technology wasn't getting deployed, and they couldn't figure it out. They just, they were still selling the agreements. People weren't using them. They were buying, let's say, a Cisco Call Manager phone system instead of, at the time Microsoft Lync or now Skype. And instead, the 3-year term would come up, and the people who were buying these agreements would say, we're going to cut out that piece of our agreement, and Microsoft would obviously see less and less. So no secret here. So Microsoft started feeling like, how do we get deployment partners and licensing into the right people's hands to help the customer go out and consume the technology? So they created a program. Now it's going on 2 years ago, and it's not widely spread yet. There's not a lot of marketing behind it that talks about paying for any license you need on a monthly basis under the CSP program or Cloud Solution Provider program, and then attaching a partner to come out and help you deploy and consume it. And in a lot of cases, like I mentioned, Microsoft will provide funding to do that. So CSP is a simple program that has a pricing list of everything you can imagine Microsoft, from Azure to Office 365 to the products like Visual Studio and CRM, or now it's being called Dynamic CRM, all the way down to your traditional, like we talked about, Office products, Outlook, and even the Windows 10 OS if you're interested in moving up to Windows 10. So it's a nicely broken out list of products that you can buy, pay for a monthly. When you're not using them, don't pay for them, but a really, really flexible model of licensing. So for the customers who have, whether they have or have not been in an enterprise or committal agreement before, it oftentimes is a no-brainer for them to go this route. So as we're seeing in our world is, customers, EAs are coming up, they're coming to us and saying, what if we looked at the CSP model, and we're helping them do cost comparisons, and they're really liking, what we're able to do with CSP. And in fact, sometimes go leverage Microsoft funding and actually help them deploy whatever it might be. I mean, there's a big push out there for Azure today. There's a big, obviously, push for Office 365. So if Microsoft feels it's a fit there for the customer and they're interested, they'll pay a managed solution, for example, or whatever partner you're using to help you deploy it. So the benefits, I mean, let's just get right into it. And if there's any questions, by all means ask them. So save money and pay only for what you use, no true-ups. So it is true. When you go in and you buy a license, I'll just use Exchange Online from Microsoft, which is their online email server package from Office 365. If you pay for it for, I don't know, 50 users this month and you decide you're going to merge with another company, you don't need them the next month, you can literally turn them off the next month. If in fact you added licenses today, November 18th, and tomorrow the 19th, and then another 10 on the 25th of November, you would actually be prorated for each of those purchases through the end of the month. So you would only pay for a proration of that month based upon the date you stood up the licensing. So the old idea of you don't pay till the end of the year or anything like that trips. Literally you pay by the day for what you use in these licensing agreements. Everybody knows this. We're turning these expenses into OpEx expenses. So for a lot of companies, they like the fact that they can pay when they use it on a monthly basis. There is discounting, okay? There is discounting off which you guys, the consumer, can go online right to Microsoft.com or Office 365 and see as a retail price. There's discounting off that licensing if you go through a CSP or cloud solution provider. So as you work with your partner or whoever that is, make sure you're asking for those discounts along the way. And then, hopefully those discounts can actually outweigh what might have been in an EA potentially. There's obviously the next question that comes up a lot is, how can I get a hold of Microsoft? I used to have that through my EA. Can I still get it? And the answer is absolutely yes. As a Tier 1 CSP provider, and there's a lot of them in the world now, if you can work through one, they can actually work on your behalf to call in a Microsoft and open up tickets and get support just as you would in the past with your Microsoft enterprise agreement or other type Microsoft support agreement. And then, yeah, we talked about this, but cash incentives. As Microsoft competes in the world with the Azures and the Amazons and the Googles, of course they want to have you drive Azure. So they're putting a lot of work around Microsoft Azure, Office 365, as people are hearing a lot more about EMS, Enterprise Management Suites, which is really the Microsoft answer to security. They're putting funds out there to help you deploy those type of technologies. And partners like Managed Solution can use them and hopefully save you money on deployment costs. So MPSA versus CSP, because it's so new, I think both of these models to the market, it was important we compared them. So in MPSA, the big thing you have to know is that it still has a commitment to it, whether it's 1, 2, and 3-year durations. And as you can imagine, when you sort of commit to something over 3 years, hopefully your discount's better. And again, you would work with what's called a licensing service provider today on the MPSA side. And on the CSP side, you would actually work with a systems integration partner like a Managed Solution or whoever you're working with today. But on these durations, they're 1, 2, and 3-year commitments. So if you sign up and you say I need 500 seats or licenses for a certain cloud product, you're committed for that year. There are no minimum buying requirements. So within the EA, it used to be if I'm going to do 500, that's where I want to start, and then I can keep going up from there. And you could in the EA through what's called the true up, but this one is a little bit more flexible in that they're just saying if you need to start out with 100 today because you're going to deploy over 6 months, and in the 6-month period you can get to 1,000, that's fine. You can do it that way. But you're still committing up front to a 1, 2, or 3-year term. So again, you can get exactly what you need on these terms, and you do get what we'll consider the price protection. Whereas if you're committing to the 3 years, you're going to get a certain price for a certain SKU over that 3-year period. For CSP, we talked about, as partners and as people who help procure that product for you, we are the ones that Microsoft sort of enables when, by having these engineers on our staff. So, Managed Solution and many others, we have what's called Microsoft P sellers on staff. They're actually partner sales and engineering teams who carry a Microsoft badge to help deploy technologies. We are the company here to sort of partner as the services engagement arm to help you deploy, whatever it is you're looking to do in the Microsoft Cloud. We as CSP partners, we're here to handle your ordering. So we have administrative teams who help you with questions, purchases, making sure the back-end stuff that's going on with Microsoft is working. We have, like I mentioned earlier, built automated portals for you guys so you psychologically have control of what's happening and real-time access to it. So if you want to go in today, November 18th, and figure out exactly what you owe back to your Microsoft agreement on the date with proration involved, you can do that. And then CSP partners, we also, Microsoft Dynamics and Office 365, you can add and modify seats midterm. So if you decide you're in, 500 seats of E3 from Microsoft, which includes Skype and Office and, all the Yammers and Sways, and I'm sure for people using this, they've seen all these neat tools come out. If you decided or you realize you're not utilizing those tools in your environment and you're just using Exchange Online and just some basic functions of Office Online, you can actually downgrade midterm to a lesser SKU. And we've seen a ton of customers do that once they get a hold of who's actually using what. So it's a great feature when it comes to cost savings and understanding your true licensing need. So again, a little bit more on the enterprise agreement changes. We talked earlier, but as of July last year, or this year, we're still in 2016, Microsoft did say that the enterprise agreement for anybody less than 500 seats, or 499 seats, I suppose, would be offered one more chance to upgrade or renew their enterprise agreement, but this would be the last time. And their next options would be a CSP agreement or a CSP agreement with a combination of potentially an MPSA agreement. And again, it can be sort of a mix of the two or a one-off of either. It's really up to you, but it is a changing landscape for Microsoft. The other thing that's happening in the enterprise agreement and some of the changes, it's happening across all sectors. So education, commercial, government, all of that's education, government, state and local, federal, all of these people are impacted and they're able to go in and actually buy CSP. So we have large government entities who actually purchase from one main vehicle where they had traditionally got discounts because they went back to sort of a hub and got the big discount from the partner. Nowadays, each government entity can come separate, or that large entity can actually still leverage CSP and then hand down licenses to its government entities if it chooses to. The server cloud enrollment stuff, what's called SCE, it hasn't been impacted. EAs are still available with 500 seats or more customers, and again, that's really a choice for those customers if they want to continue with EA or not. And then we talked about it earlier. Existing EA customers in that 500 or sub 500 seat count can just choose if they want to extend it over another 36 months. But what we're finding is that the Microsoft MPSA and CSP programs are really for that ever-changing business. So people who are wanting that pay-as-you-go licensing are liking them. So again, we talked a little bit about that and exhausted it, but pay for what you need. It truly is happening, and it's something that I felt that as we move to the cloud we needed to see, and it's here now. So 500 seats or more, if people are interested and want to stay in the enterprise agreements, it may make sense for you. We have customers who say, I'm just steady. We're going to have 1,000 people. We don't expect to grow, or if we grow, it's going to be maybe 10% a year. So maybe companies with 500 seats, considering the discounting is there, and they feel like they got the right relationship in terms of working with Microsoft, and they've taken advantage of what's called Premier Deployment Service from Microsoft, or even what's called MCS, Microsoft Consulting Services, maybe having that stability for them is what they want. So don't let me tell you not to get into EA. Let me just tell you that it is still available, and it is for companies over 500 seats. Where we do find that EAs don't necessarily work is when we work into larger clients and they are doing M&A, and they want to unbundle, or they want to be in a position where the SKUs, where the users can be removed and added as needed, as different. One of our giant manufacturing clients, as they sort of grow and they merge 3 companies together, they're going to obviously downsize seat counts at a certain point in time. So having that flexibility is important for them. So this does actually make sense for the CSP deal for some of the larger clients as well. So price comparisons, we already talked about this. The discounted consulting rate, the 20% off the enterprise retail pricing of what you see online. Consulting rates to do the deployments we had talked about. It's offset at times with Microsoft where they're paying us to do some of it, so our consulting rates can be discounted. There's a lot of proof of concept, workshop, what's called customer immersion experience dollars, where companies like us come in and work with you to give you a day in the life of using new Microsoft technology, or do a day like an education workshop around, let's say, Microsoft Azure. There's actually nowadays even the ability to get free migrations to the cloud that are kind of done in tandem with Microsoft and a partner, where Microsoft will work with companies like us to actually get your people and your users migrated, mailboxes, Skype, OneDrive, all that good stuff into the cloud. And then for us, companies like us, it's just a vehicle where we provide unlimited pre-sale support. I'm a big believer in investing in our companies that we deal with and our partners. When new technology comes out, the first thing you want to do is be educated. So there's a lot of time put into this, and it's important that whatever we are pushing out there towards you guys, it makes sense to be fit in your environment. So I thought this was a good slide. It's kind of a comparison, and I won't go through it too much about sort of what's in the middle there, MPSA, CSP, and sort of the target customer size. And some of you guys may or may not know what segment you fit into, but it kind of does it by seat count here. But really the different licensing agreements that are out there. So I'll start with the bottom, the MOSP, okay, Microsoft Open Services. So basically those are for companies real small. But as you kind of move up the chain, companies who have CSP, 1 seat, all the way up to 250, all the way up through 500. CSP makes a lot of sense, and you can kind of see where the partner fits in here, between selling it, transacting it, billing it, managing, and then we talked about supporting it, really helping you guys consume what's out there. And then again, when it talks about the fundamentals of the offer, there are pre-pay subscriptions for a year, but again, as we talked about, it is pay-go monthly in most areas, where in a lot of cases, the rest of these agreements as you move up, it is sort of a committal, whether it's 1 year or all the way up through 3 years. And if you guys want to see this slide deck, I'm happy to send it to you so you can use that last sheet to kind of do some comparisons. So one of the things that I'm a big believer in is, as we enable you guys to buy what you need when you need it, you really need a portal to be able to go in there and do that. So as we went out on our venture and started partnering with a lot of our customers to help them buy this pay-as-you-go licensing through CSP, we actually built a platform that's really a cloud marketplace for pay-as-you-go licensing called Snap. And it includes every single SKU from Microsoft with you as the individual customer's discount to be able to go out and buy licensing when you need it, look at the dashboards and get feedback about how much you're spending by user, by department, just as the organization, what SKUs you're buying, and really have the ability to turn them on and turn them off and be able to do what's called provisioning of licenses into the Microsoft portal. And I just asked a couple of days ago to one of our architects who's dealing with a large customer of ours, what's it been like for our partner, or customer in this case, who's able to do it? And they said, it's so amazing to be able to go online and within 5 seconds turn up 500 seats, and if they decide after the month they weren't going to use them all, they can turn them quickly off. So I think for anybody who's been in the EA world, that was a little bit more challenging in the past, and now it's just seamless by you being able to go onto these portals. Oops, is it moving forward here? Nope, that was it. So anyway, so let me go back. There's 3 changes that are happening in the Microsoft ecosystem. Enterprise agreements are sort of phasing out. There's a whole conversation around how to rebuy. As a company, that's part of our job to come in and help you guys understand that. It's also our job to come in and invest in you guys as customers to try to help you with what makes sense in your environment. And like I said, not all these bundles and everything Microsoft makes a ton of sense at times for organizations as new products have came into market. So really understanding and helping you with your technology strategy is what we're here to do. The automation portals, we believe, change the dynamic in giving you the ability to buy what you need when you need it. And again, going to this pay-as-you-go licensing model for any CFO or CIO who is fiscally minded, they're seeing the benefits of this pay-go model. So thank you. I didn't want to get too further. I think we got, 12:37, so 37 minutes. We're going to keep doing these, you guys. If you have questions about licensing, if you have questions about deployment services, if you just have questions about the technology, about what's coming out, and there is a lot right now around security, identity management, new features in Office 365 with Skype and Enterprise Now Management Suite, which used to be called Mobility Suite. Any of those things you guys are interested in talking about, let us know. But keep in touch, and we appreciate it. Thanks, guys.